You're listening to 91 Reasons, a journey into the twisted landscape of pop culture. Keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times. And now, the voice, Jeff Tucker.
The movies that we like, the movies that we share with our friends, they tell us something about ourselves. You know, your choice of movies tells people what kind of person you are. And not particularly. I mean, I've seen people who love horror movies and they're not serial killers, you know. Heck, I like horror movies and I'm not totally crazy, you know. But it's funny also when people recommend a movie and they, you know, I preface this by saying this movie was suggested by Michael Bondi, good friend of the show, big supporter of the show. And I asked him what movie he wanted me to review, and he, you know, he said Mannequin, but he said, you know, you're gonna destroy it. And I could tell by the way he said it, he was like, when you destroy that movie, you're going to destroy part of me because I really like that movie. And I thought, well, I'm not going to destroy Mannequin. You know, Mannequin's not high art, but it's not pure schlock. It's not an awful movie. So I watched Mannequin, and I'm sorry this has taken so darn long, but you know, here's the thing. Mannequin was a really hard movie to find. Oh, I could have gone on eBay and had it sent to the house, but it wasn't cheap. And you know, I'm notoriously frugal, but I finally found it at Book Off in Westminster, where they have literally 10,000 movies, $2 each. And then they have another aisle where the movies get higher. And Mannequin, of course, was on the aisle where the movies get higher. It wasn't $1 million. But when you're looking at $2 movies and Mannequin is $7 and you go, I could buy 3 of those for one of these. And I kept looking for Mannequin in one of those like 4-packs where it's like have an 80s night or 80s slumber party night. Thinking I would find it in there because, you know, Andrew McCarthy is a dreamboat. But it was not to be. But that's not Michael's fault that the movie's hard to find. You know, that's my fault because I don't own every single movie. But hey, what are you going to do, right? 91 Reasons broadens your horizons. And mine too. Now, I saw Mannequin back in the day. You couldn't really escape a movie like Mannequin. It came out in 1987. I was looking at when it came out. It actually was released in February, which is like a dumping ground for movies. So the studio didn't have much faith in Mannequin. But you know what? This was a #1 hit. This was #1 at the box office. This spawned a #1 hit with Starship's Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now. And Mannequin was on the radar for a while. Then when it came out on home video, it was massively popular. We couldn't keep this movie in stock. Mannequin, 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 right? I had to get on a waiting list to bring it home to watch. Remember the waiting list? Can I get on the waiting list for that movie? Well, I'll just be in the store. Just let me know. You know, there's no cell phones. You can't go home. I'm not going to call you at home when Mannequin comes in, so you'll be in the store, right? I have that movie for you. Someone just returned it. Oh, awesome. It's not rewound. Oh, I'll wait. Let me rewind it. So, Mannequin, right? This is Andrew McCarthy, Kim Cattrall, and G.W. Bailey, who's the guy who was on, more famous for being on Designing Women for years and years. But Mannequin's a weird movie because it opens with a little pre-show where you see Kim Cattrall and her stereotype, almost Jewish mother in ancient Egypt, and she's married. She's gotten Kim Cattrall she's trying to get her married, you know. It's an arranged marriage to all these people, but no one wants her because Kim Cattrall is too liberated as a woman. She wants to think for herself and dress herself and doesn't want to be a housewife, wants to invent things and be an artist. And how dare she? And the mom's like, well, you have to. This is the way life is for us in ancient Egypt. And Kim Cattrall, who's dressed as she's hiding as a mummy. She goes, well, she prays to the gods. Dear gods, get me out of here. And the gods answer her prayers by converting the film into a cartoon where we see, her name is Emmy. We see Emmy journey through human history, each time rebuffing the advances of whatever man happens to be in that time period, stopping only for a romance with, I think, Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, before finally being transferred, her soul being transferred into a department store mannequin. And that's where the movie opens. Now, that all happens before the movie starts, in earnest. So if you come into this movie late, even by like 3 minutes, or like Milhouse on The Simpsons, never see the opening scene of Finding Nemo. If you miss the opening scene of this movie, you would have serious doubts as to what kind of movie you're watching. Because I watched it with a critical eye, as much as I could, because this is really a fluffy piece of cake, this movie. But the first 30 minutes of this movie, you're convinced, if you haven't seen the preamble, that Andrew McCarthy's character is going completely insane. He loses job after job after... First off, he creates Emmy as a mannequin in the first few minutes of the movie, and has this weird moment where he's just completely in love with this nude mannequin. Then he gets fired. Then he goes through job after job after job. He's an ice cream scooper, I think. He's a birthday party person. He's a pizza guy. And he can't get a job. And he's got a girlfriend who looks like Lilith from Cheers. She is they probably patterned her after Lilith. She is the stereotypical 80s yuppie woman who wants a career, and she wants a career because she wears big shoulder pads and her hair is pulled back very severely, and she's a very severe looking woman, which of course I was attracted to immediately. She's much better looking than Kim Cattrall. I know, shock, blasphemy, right? But she's mean and terrible, right? So, like all 80s movies, you can't just have a romance. It has to be a romance set against the backdrop of X. And what I mean by that is Karate Kid, the romance is set against the backdrop of competing in a karate tournament. One Crazy Summer happens to be about yacht sailing. Teen Wolf is about basketball, right? So they all have this background noise to set the movie against. And Mannequins is very strange. And I had a lot of whiffs of Little Shop of Horrors, because he ends up applying for a job or accidentally getting a job at this giant department store, this Macy's clone. He saves the new owner, or the recently owner, from being hit by a falling sign, and it's Estelle Getty in a fun supporting role, and she decides to give him a job in delivering stuff around the store. There's a great character turn by James Spader. This guy, he's got a renaissance right now with all the stuff he's doing. Not the least of which is the Black File. What's that show on NBC that he's on? And then he was the voice of Ultron. Like, he's all over the place right now, right? But back in the 80s, this guy made a complete career out of playing the smarmiest characters you can imagine. And with Andrew McCarthy, he was in Less Than Zero, and he was also in Pretty in Pink, and now he's in Mannequin. So these guys were kind of like buddy pictures, even though in the films they're complete at odds enemies, right? But Spader's turn in the movie, he's got the worst haircut. If I had to guess, he's playing Nathan Thurm, the Martin Short character from SCTV, who was the lawyer with the cigarette with the 3 inches of ash on the end, Mr. Thurm, you're being defensive. I'm not being defensive. You're the one that's being defensive. You want to point fingers. Point the fingers at yourself. Why don't you do that? You're too afraid. one of my favorite Martin Short characters, and Spader's doing a pretty good representation of it. At least that's my opinion. So the backdrop that this movie is set against, and what we'll find out over the course, and what it takes from Little Shop of Horrors, is it's about window dressing. And you know when Seymour puts Audrey 2 in the window, and Mr. Mushnick says, just putting a plant in the window is not going to bring people in. And immediately Christopher Guest comes in. I couldn't help but notice that amazing plant in the window. I'll take 5 dozen roses. This is about window displays at the store. This store would have amazing business if they could just have an interesting window display. So what happens is Andrew McCarthy's character sees the mannequin that he made in the beginning. And that's where the, shades of mental illness creep in. Because there's a couple of shots where he is unnaturally attracted to what is an inanimate object. It is a piece of plastic. And it's not like Lars and the Real Girl where, she's anatomically correct or anything. This is a mannequin that doesn't even have movement, right? And he's banging on the glass going, I thought about you all day. I couldn't stop thinking about you. So when he gets to the job, he finds the Kim Cattrall mannequin, Emmy, and she comes to life. He has broken the spell. And again, if you don't know that she's trapped in there because of the Egyptian gods, you would think this guy's having a mental breakdown. He is about to end up catatonic in an insanitarium because he's crazy. And him and Emmy have this, I don't know how do you describe it. They have this weird montage relationship in the store where they're playing with costumes, and there's it's a music video. It's the 80s, so of course there's a music video in the middle of the movie, and you heard the music at the beginning. Do you dream about me when you close your eyes? And he plays a mobster guy, and then he plays this buttoned up guy read the paper, and she shows that she's in lingerie, but they don't have sex in the beginning. Even though she's practically naked for most of that montage. And eventually he's going to have to, well, she does drop all of her clothing. It's in the trailer. But anytime Emmy changes clothes, he's going to see her naked. Jonathan's going to see her naked. I mean, that's just weird. It's just a very weird set of circumstances. So they end up setting up a window display that is so amazing that crowds are gathered the next morning, which of course he kind of doesn't remember doing some of it, and you think, boy, did he black out from his insanity, or is he having an episode? Does he have a brain cloud like in Joe versus the Volcano, or is he suffering phenomenon like John Travolta? But the store, of course, now the business is turned around, and he gets promoted to window dresser with this other character, and this is a character you would never get to do in a movie today in a million years. Hollywood, played by G.W. Bailey, is this huge stereotype of a gay black man. Now, here's the thing. This was 1987. He is comic relief, but he is also a real character. And all this talk about, diversity and such, he's a black guy, he's a gay guy, he has the best job in the movie. So it's weird to think people are fighting for this and that when in 1987 they had it figured out. The writer and director of this movie was Michael Gottlieb, who made a string of mostly forgettable movies. He sadly died of a motorcycle crash in 2014. But Hollywood, he has all of the one-liner zingers, He's the sassy guy. But ultimately, he's just as important a character as the other ones. And the fact that he's gay is not really an issue. So I found that pretty refreshing for a movie. Because if you want a stereotype character, there's a night watchman played by the guy from, I think, G.W. Bailey, maybe he's the guy from Police Academy. You know, he's got a bulldog and he's silly. And I looked up the making of Mannequin, and the people involved with it, they weren't sure what they were doing. The director kept asking to make it bigger, make it bigger. They realized they're making a cartoon. It's a live action cartoon. And once you figure that out, once you figure out that this is a fluffy piece of cake, then you can sit back and enjoy the movie. Everybody is overacting. Everybody is hamming it up. The villains are over-the-top villains. The good guy is an earnest good guy with his heart on his sleeve. The female lead, she is not a damsel in distress. Yes, she is cursed. You know, no one can see her except Jonathan. But she never treats it as if she's being held captive by something. Instead, she just comes to life and she's alive at that point. And when she's not alive, she's not alive at that point. So, Mannequin plays fast and loose with the rules of the curse. And we're never really certain how to break the curse. Not that we're ever told that it is a curse. Just that Emmy prayed for help and was given help. Right? So, Jonathan has to keep coming up with these bigger and more extravagant window displays. And at one point in the movie, they're so giant that there's a bus, the front end of a bus sticking out of the building, and you're like, how did he do that overnight? But, you know, again, with a movie like Mannequin, you don't stop and ask why. You just like, we're gonna settle in. It's a live action cartoon. It's a romantic little fluff piece, and you enjoy it for what it is. And Mannequin is a very enjoyable movie. I am not a Kim Cattrall fan. I was in Star Trek VI, and I was in Mannequin. You know, it's kind of like the Brad Pitt conundrum. You could love a bunch of Brad Pitt movies and still not be a Brad Pitt fan. You know, I remember Seven and Fight Club, and you're like, man, Brad Pitt's... I don't like Brad Pitt, but man, he's great in these movies. So, you know, Kim Cattrall is most known for Sex and the City, and I'm not a fan of that character, not a fan of that show. It's not made for me, so I totally get it. But you know what? In Mannequin, she is incredibly charming. Of course, she's gorgeous beyond anything, and she's incredibly charming and fun, and it's weird. In a romantic comedy, there's no, you know, boy meets girl, they have relationship, and there's a breakup, and they got to get together before the end of the movie. There's none of that in Mannequin. She has no conflicts with anybody as far as the people want to discover why Jonathan is carrying this mannequin around. But there's no breakup. You know, there's no forces trying to sway Emmy's opinion of Jonathan where he has to prove himself as a man. Instead, they're physically trying to kidnap Emmy, which they do at the end. And, you know, we're treated to a sequence where the mannequins are on a conveyor belt being completely chopped up. And Jonathan has to break in and save her, right? And by saving her and being completely selfless, he breaks the curse. And they look up and see that a janitor is watching them, and she says, he can see me. You know, this is after we've seen Jonathan riding around Philadelphia with Emmy on the back of his motorcycle, Emmy as a mannequin on the back of his motorcycle. And people are like looking at him, and one guy, you know, his wife goes, what's going on? And he goes, who are you to judge? And like, okay, well, that's awfully forward thinking, folks. And when Jonathan is carrying Emmy through the store, and he takes her in the bathroom, or he takes her in the dressing room, and the idea is, I guess they're having sex in there, and all the people are, you know, people we work with are listening outside of the dressing room, like trying to hear him having sex with a mannequin. It's very, like, the moments like that are very strange in this movie. Like, everybody is buying into, like, if this is reality, they must think he's completely nuts. But it's okay, because he's got talent as far as the window things go, and because of his talent, they're not going to lose their job when the store closes, because the store's not going to close. They're not going to be taken over by the store down the road. Which is, I mean, it's so weird. Hollywood even says, I would never bother you when you're getting a piece of wood, but I need to talk to you. And you're like, oh, he's bought into it. Everybody's completely okay with Jonathan having sex with this mannequin. And then and then the other interesting part of that is Jonathan and Emmy eventually do have sex in the store. They get all these fur coats and they make like a fur coat tent in the middle of cosmetics, in the middle of the night, and they have sex. And in the morning when he wakes up, she's in the window, and he's nude in cosmetics, covered by fur, and all these people are circled around him going, oh, this is art. I wonder what kind of art he's making now. And when he gets up and runs off naked, they all applaud. And later in the movie, we find out that Estelle Getty, this is 1987, remember, has just installed video cameras in the store. So she has on tape the bad guys stealing Emmy so that they can be taken to jail. But she also has on tape Jonathan and Emmy having sex, and Jonathan goes, how much of that did you record? And she goes, well, just enough. And you're like, okay, at this point, the curse is not broken. So when she watched the tape, is she seeing Jonathan having sex with a living Emmy or a mannequin Emmy? And if so, when can we see the tape so we know what we're looking at? So I don't know. I really have no idea. So it's mannequins all over the place. But at its core, it's this almost really candy-coated Twilight Zone episode about a guy who falls in love with a mannequin who comes to life when nobody else is around. Remember that episode of the Twilight Zone where the woman is shopping and they grab her at the end and they tell her, look, you're a mannequin. And once it was your turn to go out in the real world, but it's somebody else's turn. That's probably where he got the idea. The IMDb says he got the idea looking at a mannequin that seemed to be moving because of light and shadow, and that he wrote a first draft that was tailored towards Dustin Hoffman being like an older guy falling in love with a mannequin. But as soon as Andy McCarthy, who at the time was a big star, decided to throw his hat in, it changes the tone of the movie. And Andy McCarthy was massive after Pretty in Pink. I mean, this is right at Pretty in Pink. If not, it's either a few months before or a few months after. So he's got movie after movie coming out. But I enjoyed Mannequin. I've got it on my shelf now. I'd watch it. I don't know if Rachel would sit and watch it with me, but it's a cute. It's a date movie. You know what I mean? And here's the thing. And when I lament about the state of movies today, they don't make a lot of date movies anymore. There's one out now called The Big Sick, but there used to be almost every other week some sort of movie you could take a date to. Just a little fluffy boy meets girl movie you could take. Nothing real hardcore, no death or anything. Just a movie you take a girl to. So, hey, let's go on a date and we'll go see a movie. And because they're romantic, we'll be romantic. Like, you know what I'm talking about? I'm talking 50 Shades of Grey here. Talking just a romantic comedy like Can't Buy Me Love or Mannequin or Making Mr. Right or there's a million of these movies. And you know what? They simply don't make enough of them anymore. They go straight to disc or they go straight to, Netflix and chill, right? But there's something about, for me, going to the movies and watching something different. And there's not a lot of different these days. But they made a sequel to Mannequin, Mannequin 2 on the Move. It starred Christy Swanson and had a completely different plot about a magic amulet. You could tell, they liked that they owned the name Mannequin, and they thought, we own it. Let's make a sequel. Well, the story in Mannequin's told. So they just upped everything and amped it up with magic and her turning into a. I've never seen it, but I looked at the trailer, and it looks like they turn the mannequin portion of her into like a plot point where just when something is about to happen, the necklace falls and she's back to being a mannequin, or the necklace is put on or something like that. Whereas in the first one, it's completely more organic, and it's more about it's more about Jonathan. It's like, look, Jonathan, we can be together, but we're only together when it's just us. I'm your secret Canadian girlfriend. You know what I mean? Nobody knows about me but you. And I happen to be perfect, so you're not going to spoil this by ruining it. There's also a character in this movie, and I don't know what his name is. He's not really a big character, right? Well, I should preface it by saying G.W. Bailey is Captain Felix, and the character I'm talking about, Hollywood, is Meshach Taylor from Designing Women. But there's another character in this movie, so they keep cutting to Jonathan's ex-girlfriend, and she's the very severe career woman, and she works. Originally, it looks like she works at a advertising agency, of course, the go-to profession in the movies. But then it's revealed she works at her name is Roxy. Roxy works at a rival store chain, and they want to, it's called Illustra. It's very 80s with a lot of neon. It's the kind of place I would have shopped. It's like, it reminds me of like Chess King, you know what I mean? Or The Limited, but way back in the 80s. And they want to steal Jonathan away so he can do windows for them. And she works with a character that belongs in another movie completely. It's this Italian guy who keeps hitting on her. And he hits on her, as subtly as Michael Scott from The Office. He's completely inappropriate. He's completely gross for most of the movie. Everything that comes out of his mouth is a double entendre about his wiener. And you just can't believe, like, I get that it's 87, but this guy's almost from the 60s, And at one point, he propositions her every scene that he's in. And at one point, she's so mad at Jonathan, she takes him up on it. And they end up back at his place, which of course has, tiger striped blankets and that whole like high karate man look. And she's sitting on the bed dejected, and he's going, this has never happened to me. And the idea is like, he's got erectile dysfunction and he can't perform. And she's mad at that. And I'm like, this is from another movie, man. Where did this plot fit in? Like, not only is this guy a lech, but the way he gets his comeuppance, pardon the term, is when he finally gets her in the sack, he can't perform. So I was bewildered by this whole subplot. It was the 80s. Maybe it was trying to give the movie a little edge, because I've said before, most of the movie's really pretty sweet. But he's completely out of control in the movie, completely bizarre. But ultimately, Mannequin made a ton of dough. It had a really tiny budget of $7 million, almost $8 million, and ended up making nearly $43 million. I mean, in 1987, that's a lot of money for a little tiny comedy that the people making it thought was a joke. The studio thought, what are we going to do with this silly movie? But they got lucky in that number of things. First off, it's a sweet, hard-on-its-sleeve movie. I've said that before. It benefited by Andrew McCarthy taking over the lead, being the lead in the movie. It also benefited greatly from the Starship song, Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now, because that thing had continuous airplay on MTV. And the music video for that song is like a mini version of the plot of the movie, where you see movie clips, and then you see the two singers from the Starship being turned into mannequins. So there was a lot of, dare I say, synergy going on, and this all helped to make this movie was a pretty big hit, especially for a February release. Nobody goes to the movies in February, especially in 1987. Imagine how cold it was, in Philadelphia, the city they're trying to promote. But hey, if you have this movie, check it out. Again, watch it in your collection. If you don't, good luck, because it's tough to find. I was really looking for that Mannequin 2 double feature. That would have been great, because I would have watched the second one, because I bet the second one's impossible to find. You can watch Mannequin on YouTube for free, but it's highly distorted. I gave that a go for about 20 minutes and then realized I can't even see what I'm watching. It's like watching an adult film on scrambled cable back in 1986, if that makes any sense. But hey, I want to thank Michael Bondi for supporting the show and all of my Patreon pledgers. You guys, you have no idea how much Patreon helps me personally and the show. There are months where that is a complete lifesaver. So thank you so much for that. And thanks to Michael for picking a fun movie. He thought I was going to trash it, but a movie this earnest, if I wanted to trash it, I'd probably have a lot of difficulty, because it is such a sweet little, like I keep saying, fluffy movie, but that's what it is. Andy McCarthy is playing it so wide-eyed and so innocent. In the first 10 minutes of this movie, a woman is turned into a mannequin. The movie becomes a cartoon, and Andy McCarthy hands a balloon to a kid who floats off into the sky. This is not real life. It's a funny, sweet little movie. I'm sure 90% of you remember going to see it back in the day. It was a huge hit on home video. Mannequin, man. Mannequin. Nothing's gonna stop us now. I can't sing. But, hey, again, thanks for everybody for supporting the show on Patreon, and for Michael for picking a cool little movie like this. Hey, I'm going to Comic-Con week after next, and then we're going to be at 91 Reasons is going to have a table at Midsummer Scream. That's the Halloween celebration convention, July 29th and 30th at the Long Beach Convention Center. Look up Midsummer Scream, and you can buy discount ticket. Well, I don't know if there's discount tickets left, but look around. I think it's on Gold Star right now. We're going to have a table. You can support the show by coming and saying hi. We're going to have these really cool... I took old vintage Nintendo cartridges for the NES, and it has a brand new 91 Reasons label on it. And attached to that NES cartridge is a flash drive with about 40 episodes from the show, including one that has never aired, where I talk about making phony phone calls to radio stations. We'll have those, and then I play the tapes of me calling the radio stations. Thank you, computer, for making noise. I'll also be hosting 2 panels on Saturday. I'll be hosting at 1:30 the Knott's Scary Farm reveal panel, and then on Sunday at 4:30, I believe, I'll be hosting the Making Monsters panel with representatives from the Jim Henson Company, the Stan Winston Company, and Garner Holt. That's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm hosting 2 panels. We have a table. We'll have time boxes. That's at Midsummer Scream, July 29th and 30th at the Long Beach Convention Center. Please come to the show if you're around and say hi. And then, I did start a second podcast called the Gemmer Collector Cast. That's GEMR Collector Cast. You can get it on SoundCloud and iTunes. Google Gemmer Collector Cast and it'll come up. It's where I interview people about their amazing collections. And it's a completely different kind of show. It's much more straightforward. It's not as loosey-goosey as 91 Reasons is. But it's a lot of fun. And I'll tell you, learning about people and what they collect and why they collect has been very eye-opening and very educational and very, very fun. So check that out. And hey, we'll be at San Diego Comic-Con week after, next week? Is that next week? Oh my God, it's next week. Help me. I need more time. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks again to Michael Bondi. I am Jeff Tucker. I am the voice, and the show you just heard was the Mannequin. You know what? When the show's over, I turn into a mannequin. I don't exist except when the show is on. This is 91 Reasons.
Thanks for listening to 91 Reasons. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Find us on Facebook. Is anyone even still listening?